Hi there and welcome to the History Teacher. This revision video covers Weimar and Nazi Germany from the GCSE Edexcel 9-1 course. Hopefully you'll also find it useful if you're studying any of the other exam boards or if, like me, you just love history. You can now become a member to support me to continue making this content from just £1 a month. Plus you'll get exclusive access to worksheets, revision materials, and you'll get to vote on forthcoming episodes. The link is in the description. Hi there guys! Last time we finished with Hitler establishing a dictatorship in Germany. This time we're going to be looking at how Hitler established a police state in which Hitler used the police and other forces to control what the people said and did. It was a means of controlling the population and making sure that the people did nothing to challenge the authority of Hitler. There were three main parts of the Nazi police state: the SS, led by Heinrich Himmler, the SD, led by Reinhard Heydrich, and the Gestapo, or secret police, also under the control of Heydrich. You will remember the SS, or Schutzstaffel, which means protection squad, was originally set up in 1925 as Hitler's personal bodyguard. At first, it was a small force of around 240 men, but during the 1930s it increased massively to around 240,000 men. The SS were clearly distinct from the SA in their black uniforms, and they were fiercely loyal to Hitler and Himmler. They were the group that warned Hitler about Rome and carried out the Night of the Long Knives in 1934. The SS were brutal and acted outside of the law, beating people up, arresting people for no reason, and killing people. By 1936, the SS were put in charge of all the police. The SS would take only perfect Aryan men, and they were expected to marry racially pure women and have racially perfect children. The SD, or Sicherheitsdienst, meaning security force, were formed in 1931 by Himmler. Reinhard Heydrich was in charge of them. Their job in the early 1930s was to monitor and disrupt the activities of other political parties, but after 1934 they began keeping files on everyone suspected of opposing the Nazis. They wore grey-green uniforms and spied on suspected opponents of the Nazis. Finally, the Gestapo. These were the secret police, also under the command of Heydrich. They were the most feared of all the Nazi police. They wore no uniforms and were originally set up by Goering in 1933, but in 1934 moved under the banner of the SS. They spied on people and listened to conversations and arrested anyone who criticised the Nazis. They were allowed to use torture to gain confessions. Around 160,000 people were arrested by the Gestapo in 1939 alone. The Gestapo also used paid and volunteer informants, which meant that people in Germany lived in fear, not knowing who was a Gestapo officer or informant. Those arrested in dawn raids often disappeared, with their relatives receiving a letter telling them they had died in custody. Ultimately, the main weapon the Nazis used against the population was fear, and nothing frightened people more than the secretive Gestapo. Despite there being only around 30,000 Gestapo officers, no one ever knew who they were. Another source of terror for the German people were the concentration camps. These were not the same as the death camps, which were used by the Nazis from 1942 to mass murder minority groups such as Jewish people in the Shoah. Concentration camps were prisons for those who opposed the Nazis. The first camp was opened in Dachau in 1933, and by 1939 150,000 people were under protective arrest. Camps were located far from towns or cities to avoid people seeing what was going on in them. The camps were brutal. They were used by some SS officers as a chance to bully, beat and murder people. Inmates were not fed properly and often died of their wounds or from starvation. The camp inmates included undesirables such as gay people, some minority groups such as Jews, although both of these groups were treated differently by the outbreak of World War II. And finally, political prisoners such as communists and journalists. Again, the stories of the way people were treated leaked out to the population as a whole, and people lived in even more fear. Hitler was worried that despite the work of the three police forces, people would be released by the courts at their trial. So Hitler set out to control the courts also. His first move was to pass a law that said that all judges had to be members of the Nazi Party. Any judges that made decisions that Hitler didn't like could be sacked. Judges were told that the Nazi Party's rules were more important than the law. Then he got rid of trial by jury. Now the Nazi judges would be in charge of deciding a person's guilt, a decision that never contradicted the decision of the police. Finally, he set up the People's Court, which heard all cases of treason. These trials were being held in secret by judges who had been personally chosen by Hitler. Hitler often took a hand in deciding the sentencing of the accused, and there was no appeal. Between 1934 and 1939, 534 people were sentenced to death in these trials. Okay, that is everything you need to know about how Hitler used the police state to maintain control through terror. Now for a quick word from my other half, and I will see you next time.
History teacher's SO here. She's given up work and is living off her savings to make these videos full time. Unfortunately, savings don't last forever, so we're asking for your help. If you can spare any money to help her keep making these videos, please visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description and give what you can. That said, we know these are difficult times. You might not have any money to spare, but you can still help. Like, comment, and subscribe for the algorithm, but also spread the word. Tell your friends, colleagues, and anyone you think might be interested. Thanks.